Mary Hahn was the prominent civil rights attorney who specialized in representing clients with claims against the Albuquerque Police Department. She was found dead in her home in 2010. Experts, including the Attorney General, says the case was terribly mishandled due to inappropriate directions from high-ranking police and civilian administrators who rushed to rule the death a suicide. A federal judge recently dismissed the civil rights lawsuit filed against APD and city officials over the mishandling of the case. The family appealed. And now Mayor Berry and the city of Albuquerque have filed a motion which, if successful, will force Mary Hahn's family to pay the city's legal fees, some $60,000. These fees were paid to the city attorney's brother-in-law, Stephen French, and Laura. City officials have maintained this suit was frivolous. Interesting, we'll parse out that word frivolous there. But there were so many people at the scene, there's so much confusion about this. Let's just start with this frivolous lawsuit thing. What does it actually mean? Because you hear that a lot. What's frivolous and what's not frivolous in these kind of things?
Well, I mean, typically a frivolous law case would, or a frivolous lawsuit would be an attorney, filing something on a whim, essentially not having enough evidence, not having enough, knowing that you have standing for the case, making sure you have the basics to actually file a case. And some of
these come out of jailhouse lawyers and stuff.
Right, sometimes you have people who just, it's just completely not a real case, and it's not even pled well, there's not the right documents there. So there's a lot of sort of, there is a test or a lot of evidence that could point to a frivolous lawsuit. In this case, the fact that it actually went before a judge and the judge on the merits decided that it didn't meet the standard for the civil rights case, that doesn't indicate that it's frivolous. Frivolous is a different standard. Now the city, their argument has been that it's been frivolous from the beginning, and in fact they're going to have to show that in order to be able to recover those attorney's fees.
Interesting.
So it isn't sort of an automatic thing. They're going to have to show what about it is it frivolous, and in fact while they're trying to demonstrate that, they could potentially be racking up more attorney's fees in doing that. So it's one of those things where they're trying to recover outside counsel fees and they're racking up more fees while they're doing it. So it does, because of that, because of the compounding of the fees, it feels a little bit like it's a retribution thing, and I think that's what doesn't sit well with a lot of people.
This is the second time that the city's basically on a civil rights matter basically tried to penalize the plaintiffs for basically exercising their rights to take a civil rights issue to court. Whether or not it had merit, ultimately a judge gets to decide, but to then say that you're going to be penalized. Mary Hahn, in the wake of this incredible disaster we've had at APD, she was one of the few attorneys in town who tried to hold APD to task and officers to good conduct. And everybody in the department knew that she was watching and that if they really screwed up, that she was going to have a client that went after them. So I think they should have been on their best behavior in this case. It's clear from what I've read that they were not, and for then this administration, the city is just digging itself deeper. This looks like now to go after a woman who was one of the few advocates for victims of police excessive force, to then say we're going to go after the family for just trying to exercise their civil rights. I mean, I'm wondering when the digging is going to stop on this issue for the administration. They could not be handling this more poorly.
Interesting. Your thoughts on this, Ian? There's other issues I want to weave into this conversation about APD. But as far as imagery, it seems to me this is a bit of a ding to the city to be asking for this money, even if they have their legal standing to do so.
It is, and by disclosure, my firm has a contract with the city. My views are my own. I agree with Senator Griego. He makes a great point. This is an issue where it's just the big bully kind of approach. Here's a city that has a $900 million budget, and they're trying to claw back $40,000 to $60,000. From an image perspective, it just doesn't float.
Interesting. What do you think about that? There's two sides to everything, but are they out of bounds here, the city, in your view?
I think for the general public, absolutely. And there are two questions that come up, and one goes to Laura. Most of us are confused. Was this the right question? Because I think most people feel for Mary Hahn's family that they were summarily, it was summarily decided it was a suicide, and they have questions. So where do they take this? Because I think Tom is exactly right. The people think there's something not correct here, and it's not fair.
And we've learned the hard way, and I'll let Laura answer again, our sole attorney on the panel. But the thing about this is, given the corruption and at the highest levels of APD and the very poor judgment, we've learned the hard way here and in Ferguson, a lot of places, how much power law enforcement has at the scene of a crime. And to tell a family that's in mourning for a very, very questionable circumstances of this loss, a woman who was at the peak of her career, had no history of depression, suddenly allegedly taking her own life, to say that now we've got to trust what the police did and that there was nothing untoward going on, given the reputation of APD, including in those times, I think is, again, we have to take an honest look at what's happening in our police department. And I think there's cause at the very least to say, look, given everything that's been going on for the last 20 years, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and we're not going to sue you for these fees.
Sure. Tom, swing back to you. Bit of a different subject, but same as they say. The mayor and Chief Eden and some others have been in Las Vegas, meeting with some folks there about how community engagement works, how culture works inside a department. They made some strides in Vegas. That seems to be a good way to go. They're reaching outside of the culture that Eric's talking about, to hear other voices, get other input. Your sense of that trip and what they're doing with it?
Well, I think the intent of the trip was spot on. What came about, is clear. What happens in Vegas doesn't stay in Vegas. It ends up making the USA Today. And the Chief Eden's comments were unfortunate. While he probably was not pulling any punches, he told it like it is.
Go ahead and let the folks know what you're.
Well, yeah. Specifically, now I'm trying to find the exact quote, but it wasn't. He said with regards to officers, he says, yes, we may be stuck with them. He's saying that there are some officers who might not meet standards that he has for what a police officer should be. And so while residents and citizens some might say, oh, okay, great, finally, we get some confirmation. Inside the force, all of a sudden people are saying, well, which list am I on? And as far as morale in a department that is already shell-shocked, at least perceived to be shell-shocked, there's a lot of questioning right now. But, and it's unfortunate because there are so many great law enforcement officers that comment alone all of a sudden puts the onus on the public going, well, is this one they're stuck with, or is this one that is a good one?
I appreciate. Let me swing to Laura. I appreciate that point a bunch. And by the way, Tom's referring to a USA Today piece that was entitled "Before Ferguson, There Was Albuquerque." That was a killer headline. That sense of what Tom just mentioned. It seems to me that this department in the city is in a show me phase right now. They can talk about it all they want, but they have to start showing this public, that things are moving forward. Is this enough for you, this trip to Vegas, or what has to happen?
Well, I think this is a good first step.
Right.
A blunder on the part of the chiefs, definitely, in saying this, because it really undercut morale. It makes everybody question, officers and the public, again, not have faith in the people that are supposed to serve and protect. So I think that was a major misstep. But I think, that along with the Mary Hahn issue, along with all the other stories that we've heard about police excessive force and all of that, the Mary Hawk issue, all of that, it continues to compound, and I don't think they're out of the woods. I think they have to continue to make great strides to try to make a difference. In the case of Vegas, they took with them somebody from ACLU on that trip, which I think is an important thing to do. You have to partner up with organizations that have credibility and care about this, from an organizational perspective, and they have the public's trust, and I think that was a smart move.
Everything's in steps, eh?
Exactly. And one thing I'll say, to what Janice mentioned, and I think she brings up a really important point, for a family and anybody who's been through a tragedy, unfortunately, having to deal with with state actors, whether it's police, whether it's the Office of Medical Investigator. I've had to deal with some of that in my own personal life. It is really frustrating and terrible when you're grieving to have to figure out what your rights are, and then to find out when your loved one was mishandled in some way, or your loved one, was the whole thing was just mishandled. You want answers.
Right.
And I think to her question, how do you get these answers? The legal system provides one route to do that. And I think that's what a court case often can do, is it can make it a public display of what exactly went on. And I think that might have been part of the intent here. And to say that that's frivolous, I think is just a slap in the face for this family.
Yeah, interesting. Coming up, a new report highlights the profound economic impact of arts and culture right here in New Mexico.